Should Eric Holder file a civil rights hate crime charge against George Zimmerman?
Look, I think it would be an absurdity, and I think it would be a miscarriage of justice. The standard for a hate trial is higher than the standard for murder. Now, a jury of 6 people spent 5 weeks, listened to all the case, all the arguments, and concluded there was not a case there. Now, this is a tragedy. It's a tragedy that Trayvon Martin is dead. But the jury concluded it was not an act of murder. It wasn't even an act of manslaughter. To think that the Justice Department can come in and cross this much higher threshold, I think would be absolutely an abuse of justice rather than the behavior of the Justice Department.
Let's hear what Van Jones, a graduate of Yale Law School, has to say. Go ahead, Van.
Well, look, I think we need to let the process go forward. There is, I think, a basis for a continued inquiry here. It does seem that there was a pattern in practice on the part of Mr. Zimmerman of focusing in on minority kids when he began to become this neighborhood watch hero, and possibly in his own mind. And that pattern in practice could be the basis for real concern here. I do want to say this. You know, the President of the United States has gotten a lot of criticism for the statement that he made about if this young man, if he had had a son, he would look like that young man. And I think that the criticism has really been unfair. I do think that in that moment, you had a need for him to make a human connection across the board with all Americans. And it's almost become to the point now, if this president acknowledges his ethnic or racial background in any way, he is criticized, and I don't think that that's right. If you look at what he actually did, just to complete my thought, what he actually did in making that statement, he talked about all Americans, and he had the Department of Justice look into it, and he has since stood back and played no role. And by repeatedly criticizing him for one half of a fragment of his sentence, it's almost as if the President of the United States has somehow inserted himself into the actual trial. He never did that.
Look, I just think it's important at the very end of the president's statement, as you just played it, Wolf, the president says we should get to the bottom of this. Well, under our system, we had a prosecution, the full power of the government. The Attorney General's indicated he and the FBI have been talking for the last 3 weeks. You have to presume that every possible effort had been made to help the prosecution. They had 5 weeks in a jury trial. They had 6 jurors sworn to do their duty. And these 6 jurors listened to this case, deliberated for 16 hours, and they said, while it is a tragedy, it is not murder, it is not manslaughter, that in fact they believe George Zimmerman had reasonable grounds to believe his life was in danger and it was self-defense. Now, my only point is for the Justice Department to try to jump in on top of that would be absolutely a travesty of justice. It would be exposing Zimmerman to a second round of risk, which is deeply against our system. And there's no evidence that they could pass that threshold any more than the prosecution did.
All right, Van, go ahead and respond.
Well, listen, first of all, we've been down this road before. Please let's not forget that the first trial for the Rodney King case, where you had those 4 LAPD officers who almost beat black motorists unarmed to death, were initially acquitted. And then you had the Department of Justice look into it, and they found that there was reason to move forward, and they did move forward, and they actually wound up with convictions. Now, that was under the color of law. Those were actual police officers and not neighborhood watch people. But we do have a tradition in our country where when something like this happens, there are multiple levels of review. We've had one level of review. The Department of Justice should look into this. It made a big difference in the Rodney King outcome finally. We also should be civil case explored. I just think that we need to respect the entire system. I think, done a good job of respecting this jury's decision at the state level, but there are other levels of our system that should be allowed to go forward.
We only have a little time left, but quickly to both of you. Van, you first. Angela Corey, the Florida state attorney who led the prosecution, even though she wasn't necessarily in the courtroom, she just told our sister network HLN's Vinnie Politan that one word to describe George Zimmerman, and she called him murderer. Does that respect the system?
Well, her job was to bring forward a prosecution. If she did not believe he was a murderer, she shouldn't have charged him with second-degree murder. So I think that it's consistent with her role and her function, her duty. I think obviously if I were Mr. Zimmerman, though, I would take offense, and I think probably most Americans think that that was ill-considered on her part. But I understand her trying to be consistent. She might be criticized if she were to say he was not a murderer, having just charged him with murder too.
Does that
with
respect the
second-degree murder.
system?
No, it doesn't
Newt?
respect the system. You have a prosecutor going out of her way to say, in effect, that 6 jurors are wrong, the judge is wrong, the process is wrong. If she had a good enough case, why didn't she bring it? If she lost the case, to call a person who has been declared innocent a murderer is inflammatory, puts his life
not
at risk,
innocent, not
and
guilty.
I think is
There's a
very
difference.
dangerous.
Yeah, well, she didn't say one. She didn't use those 2 words, not guilty. She said murderer when she was asked by Vinny one word to describe George Zimmerman, even though a jury acquitted him and said he was not guilty. Make a final point, then I got to go.
She may not have been respectful of the jury. I do want to point out there was all this fear that the black community and black youth would be disrespectful of the outcome in a riot, and there was almost no violence at all. Please let's give respect to the young people across the country who have shown respect for this process, and I think that the media owes them a big apology for assuming that just because they were black and mad, they were going to riot. No riots in America, so respect from the young people.
We never assumed that. That was going to, not this part of the media, at least in this room, the Situation Room. All right, thanks very much. Van Jones, Newt Gingrich, the new co-hosts of Crossfire that starts later.